listening to The Mark Moses Show on Sports Radio 95.9 The Fan.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And right now here on the Club 52 hotline, good friend of mine from Gainesville, and I know he's currently covering SEC Media Days in Hoover, Alabama. He's a busy man. His name is Cody Jones with FightinGators.com. Follow him on Twitter at CJonesScout. Cody, how you doing, man?
Doing well, Mark. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing just fine, and we got to start here. Has it been crazy the past couple of days at SEC Media Days? I mean, what's the circus been like?
It is always a circus, and this year has certainly been no different. It's basically just a madhouse at the hotel at the mall here in Birmingham. Just a complete I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest with you. It's over 1,000 media members. I think over 1,300 at this point. Just all running through and trying to get players and coaches pretty much wherever you can. It's organized chaos, but it is still chaos nonetheless. So it's always fun to cover, but it's also pretty exhausting just to try and keep up with everything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What has been talked about more, the SEC Network debuting next month or the new 14 playoff?
Yeah, I think the SEC has kind of pushed maybe the network a little bit more, but I think the playoff has kind of been the thing that most people have talked about. A lot of players and coaches talked about it as well. There's no question the network is going to be really impressive for the SEC. It's going to do a lot of things financially for this league and for the teams in the league that really weren't possible before. But the playoff is the thing, I think, that impacts really everything nationally, and it is a really, really big deal. A lot of players and coaches excited about this. There was a big lecture, I believe, about just what would have happened the past few years if the playoff was in place and everything. So there's a lot of different ways they're attacking this thing, but there's certainly a whole list of storylines here this week.
We're here with Cody Jones, FightinGators.com. Follow him on Twitter at CJonesScout. He's live at SEC Media Days. I know Muschamp, he talked Monday, and he kicked off pretty much SEC Media Days. What was his message to the local media there on the new football season?
Well, I was really surprised, to be honest with you, because what they usually they'll give some of us local guys that cover the team every day some time with them off to the side first, and then he gets up on the main stage and kind of starts the lead around the room from there. But I was kind of surprised at the way he handled this, because he came in and, I mean, the coaches have come in here before and known they were on the hot seat. I don't think that surprised anybody. It certainly probably isn't a surprise to him either. But he didn't waste much time throwing that out there. When he got up on the main stage in the biggest room at the hotel, there was I think it was less than a minute, and the word hot seat had already come out of his mouth. I mean, you just don't really hear that usually from coaches. They usually will just kind of use other buzzwords, whatever, but he just kind of threw it out there and said, look, I know there's going to be a lot of talk of this, and he kind of took it head on. I was kind of impressed with that. I can't really remember a lot of coaches handling it that way, and I think that was kind of the surprise factor for a lot of people, but he took a lot of the questions and made his very long opening statement, which has become almost an SEC Media Days tradition for Will Muschamp. I believe it went about 11 minutes and then talked about what felt like every single player on the roster. But ultimately it came down to the questions again, just about his job security. He said at no point last year did he believe that he was going to be let go. I was a little surprised by that, to be honest with you, and I think that a lot of people were by it. But he seemed to handle himself really well. But it's pretty remarkable to think what happened this week compared to where he was a year ago. You think a year ago, well, Muschamp's walking around, people are going, well, there's the up-and-coming coach in the SEC, the guy that led him to a BCS bowl, and now here he is getting questions about hot seats. So it's just kind of, I think, really impressive and really kind of remarkable how quickly things can change in a year, and sort of looks to be the case around Florida already.
Cody, how many times did you bring up Kurt Roper? Because I've done it 5 billion times so far in the first half of 2014. What about Muschamp? How much was he talking about Roper?
Well, a lot, and there's for good reason, because if his job is going to be saved, Roper's going to be a pretty massive part of that. So I think they're really high on him. He talked about it quite a bit. Driscoll did as well. And one of the interesting things, too, hearing some of the players, and Driscoll specifically talking about the 2012 team when Florida went to the Sugar Bowl, the offense was still putrid that season. I mean, it was really bad, and the defense is what carried the team. But Driscoll, and I think everybody kind of knew this from watching it, but I think it's the first time I could remember a player or coach actually saying it. He was pretty open and honest, saying there were multiple times where they were just flat out told, don't turn the ball over, dominate time of possession, and let the defense and special teams win it. Don't be worried about maybe the offensive production, which is such a foreign concept, I think, for most people in Gainesville, but it's kind of the way they attack things. Now, the opposite approach is being taken this year, and Roper's implementing this more of an attacking style offense, and they want to do that. Roper came in and really from day one said he didn't really care too much about stats and total yards and all this kind of stuff. He cares about points, and that's really what they're going to what they're going to focus this thing on. And and go from there. So it was really entertaining, I think, interesting to see the way that this thing was handled. But it was certainly, I think, pretty impressive as well.
We're here with Cody Jones, Fightin Gators on the Club 52 hotline. He's live from SEC Media Days right now, and I know Jeff Driscoll is there. He's going to be the key to the offense. What were some of the things Driscoll was saying to the media?
Yeah, well, the big thing for him, I think, is just comfort in this offense. And his third different offensive coordinator. Obviously, I think that brings some change to it. He kind of downplayed the impact of that and said it wasn't too big of a deal for him. But I think that there's still some change in there as well. They're going to trust his legs quite a bit, and obviously got hurt moving outside the pocket last season. But they're going to try and throw him out there right away and get him comfortable with his legs. That's a pretty big weapon that he has. So they want to be able to do that. They want to be able to get him comfortable in what they're doing. I think the biggest thing for him, though, is just kind of getting over the mental hurdle of the injuries and maybe being a little bit more smarter, more intelligent with the football. That was the issue for him. 2012, he was great. He didn't turn the ball over at all. Last year, I think he had 4 turnovers in the first 2 and 2 games and a quarter that he played. So that was a big issue, and a lot of them were in the red zone, too. So he's talked to Roper quite a bit about that this offseason. Not only ball security, but ball security inside the red zone. So that's going to be a pretty big focus, I think, for this team this year.
Switching gears to the defense, I know Dante Fowler was there, and wasn't he joking around? He's ready to start hitting people again? I mean, I am too. I mean, what were your thoughts on what Fowler was saying?
Yeah, he was really impressive. I think people were really excited to see him up there, and all of us local guys get to see it every week. He's a very likable person. He even said that, too. It was probably, I think, my favorite part of his press conference. He said, off the field, it's impossible for you not to like me. Once I get on the field, it's not like that. So he's always very entertaining to hear talk. Just a great personality, a very refreshing personality, I think, too. Some guys seem to kind of cover that up when they talk to the media, but he's not one of those at all. So definitely an interesting scenario for him. He loves the spotlight. I don't think there's any question about that. And you throw him in front of over 1,000 reporters like that, and he's going to let his personality shine like that. So really, really fun guy to be around to hear, and a really open guy, too. He talked about consistency issues for him last season. I mean, you think back to the Tennessee game last year, and everybody was just predicting almost an All-American type season for this guy, and then he basically did nothing in the second half of the season. So they really need more production out of him. They have to have that for this team to be as good as it can, and he's confident that it'll happen this year.
Were people asking him the idea of, like, he needs to be the new Dominique Easley? I mean, this is the guy for the D-line. Was he kind of asked that, or was there any answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a lot of pressure you can put on someone, especially when you look at how good Easley was those first couple games last year. But Fowler's taking that on. I mean, I think he realizes that he is the most disruptive guy on this line by far, and he can demand a double team and allow other guys to maybe face one-on-one situations, be able to beat their man and get to the quarterback. So he's going to attract a ton of attention this year. But I think he kind of got used to that last year as well. I think that's kind of why maybe the production dipped last year. When Easley went down, teams couldn't focus. The teams didn't have, they weren't forced, to focus on Easley like they did when he was out there. So they just kind of switched that attention to Fowler. That's what slowed him down a little bit. So now he's heading into this season, I think, better prepared for that. He knows what these double teams and this being the focal point of an opposition's game plan. He knows what that's like because he went through it a lot last year. So I think it'll help him out quite a bit just to what he went through last season, and I think he's putting that on himself now.
We're here with Cody Jones, Fightin Gators. Follow him on Twitter at CJonesScout. I know Hargraves III was there as well. He had a fantastic first season with the Gators. What were your impressions of him at Media Days? I mean, does he expect more from himself going into year 2?
It's kind of a weird year, when you look at a guy coming back as a sophomore and people think, he still maybe isn't that much of a leader, but for him, he doesn't really have much of a choice. He is really the only concrete guy in that starting secondary right now that people can say without a doubt is going to be in there on opening day. That second corner job is still up for grabs. I think both safety spots are as well. So it's kind of just a guessing game at this point, who's going to be out there around him. And I think that kind of puts a lot more on his shoulders. He has to be more vocal. He has to be ready to lead. And I think he's ready to do that. He's such an intelligent player. I think it's really easy to see watching him play. But what people don't see is the work he puts in the film room. He's not the guy who thinks he's arrived and he is the All-American, all-everything now and just quits working. If anything, I think all these accolades and everything he's got this preseason just pushed him a little bit further. He really, I think, has kind of taken his preparation to another level this offseason, and they're really confident in the year they're going to get out of.
So what happened with Jalen Tabor, where Muschamp's like, oh, yeah, by the way, this happened? I mean, what is the story and what happened exactly?
Yeah, the news kind of broke after Media Days was over with, but basically he was popped with marijuana possession. That they're downplaying it now and saying that everything has been taken care of. The discipline has happened internally. you kind of try to figure out what that means when they say the discipline has been handled internally. Does that mean that he just ran for his punishment, or does that mean a potential one-game suspension could still be there? I think that's the thing that I'm kind of interested to see, and I don't really know if they will make a clear statement on that until maybe the day of the first game. That's just kind of how they've done things in the past, is to not give opponents maybe a clear idea of what to prepare for. But it still is interesting, though. It's probably not the ideal way for a freshman to start out his career after a really, really strong spring, too. I mean, he was extremely impressive. At this point, I think he's probably my guess to be the starting second corner for Florida, but I don't know if this affects that at all.
All right, let me end with this. And what's interesting is everyone comes up to me from around the SEC and goes, Mark, you cover the Gators. How are they going to be good this year with that just horrible schedule? Murderer's row of all those players, those teams they got to take on. Are they asking you the same question? I mean, how are the Gators actually going to be good with that horrible schedule?
Yeah, well, here's the thing that obviously you see the Alabama and Florida State games. I think everybody would say those are probably the two toughest on the schedule, and a lot of people are chalking those up as losses at this point, and I can't really disagree with anyone doing that. The thing I think when you look a little bit more in depth at this is it is a tough schedule for sure, but I think a lot of that is based more on the names on the schedule than maybe some of the players on it. I mean, you look at teams that have lost starting quarterbacks. I mean, you look at Georgia, Hudson Mason will be starting for Aaron Murray this year. Aaron Murray obviously had been there forever and was such an experienced quarterback. Kind of some question marks there. And then you look at South Carolina, LSU. Both those games will be in Gainesville. LSU bringing most likely a true freshman starting quarterback into the swamp. South Carolina has all sorts of guys to replace, a program changer in Clowney over there, and then Connor Shaw, who never even lost a home game in his South Carolina career, had a really impressive career for them. So there's all sorts of questions, I think, for other teams on this roster. So if there is maybe a saving grace for this Florida team, I think that's it, and that there's a lot of unproven guys on the schedule. But the reality of this thing is it still is an extremely difficult schedule. They're going to have a pretty difficult time with this thing, and some really talented teams on it.
Cody Jones, Fightin Gators. Follow him on Twitter at CJonesScout. Cody, appreciate the insight from SEC Media Days, and I hope I can get you on again, man.
Sounds good, Mark.